I want to tell you something that may surprise you. Not every kind word builds trust. Not every compliment inspires respect. In fact, some of the nicest things we say can quietly corrode our credibility without us ever noticing. Maybe no one told you this, but when you offer praise that isn't rooted in truth, when you flatter without foundation, the other person doesn't feel lifted. They feel suspicious. They sense the distance between your words and your sincerity. And whether they say it aloud or not, they begin to question, what does this person really want from me? I've seen it happen in boardrooms, in marriages, even in Sunday conversations between old friends. A man smiles and says, "You're amazing at what you do," but his tone lacks conviction. A woman says, "You always know the right thing to say," but her eyes are scanning her phone. These are not compliments. They are decorations on an empty gift box, and people can tell. There's a reason why genuine admiration is so rare. It requires attention. It requires stillness. It requires us to truly see the person in front of us, not the role they play, not the benefit they bring, but the soul they carry. That kind of recognition takes effort, but it builds a bridge that no amount of empty praise ever could. Let me share something I learned when teaching public speaking years ago. The students who improved the most weren't the ones I praised every week. They were the ones I noticed. I would say, "I saw the way your voice trembled a little less today. You stood taller. Did you feel that?" And their eyes would light up, not because I complimented them, but because I witnessed them. Witnessing is stronger than flattery. It doesn't seek to manipulate. It seeks to connect. And perhaps, beneath all our interactions, that's what we really want. Not to be praised, but to be understood. Not to be admired from a distance, but to be met in our humanity. You don't need eloquent words to do that. You don't need the perfect sentence. You need presence. You need honesty. You need to care enough to see what most people overlook. There's a story I never forgot. A young violinist once played his heart out in a quiet recital hall. When the last note faded, the audience erupted in applause. But his eyes searched only for one man, his old teacher, seated in the back. The man did not clap. He simply nodded once and mouthed the words, "You listened today." That moment meant more than all the noise in the room, because it wasn't flattery, it was truth, it was recognition. Maybe that's what we're missing in our relationships. Not more compliments, but more listening. Not louder voices, but deeper presence. Not admiration for the masks people wear, but reverence for the quiet strength it takes to carry invisible burdens. And let me be clear, this is not about becoming silent or cold. It's about becoming honest, spiritual, anchored in the sacred discipline of noticing what truly matters. Jesus never praised people for their performance. He looked into their fear, their shame, their effort, and said things like, "Your faith has healed you." He spoke to what was eternal in them, not what was impressive. What if we did the same? What if, instead of saying, "You're amazing," we said, "I saw how you stayed calm when you had every reason to explode. That inspired me." What if instead of, "You're so talented," we said, "I noticed the patience behind your work. It moved me." Words like that don't inflate egos. They awaken dignity. And in a world addicted to validation, dignity is revolutionary because it doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being known. You may be thinking, "But I want to be kind. I want people to feel good around me." And that's noble. But don't mistake sugar for nourishment. What we give others should not dissolve on their tongue. It should strengthen their spine. It should remind them of who they are, even when no one is watching. That kind of language doesn't come from a script. It comes from silence, from listening, from spending time with your own soul first, so that your words to others come from overflow, not from obligation. So I ask you, what kind of presence do you bring into a room? Are your compliments a mirror of your depth, or a mask for your discomfort? There's power in deciding that your words will mean something again. There's peace in knowing that you don't need to impress to connect. You don't need to flatter anyone to be loved. You don't need to overcompensate to be respected. What people truly respond to isn't your polish, it's your presence. And presence begins with alignment. If there's a disconnect between what you say and what you feel, people will sense it. They may not know exactly why they feel uneasy around you, but they'll feel it. Trust is lost not in grand betrayals, but in small inconsistencies. Smiles that don't reach the eyes, praise that rings hollow, encouragement that feels rehearsed. So let me ask you something. When was the last time you complimented someone and then, in the silence that followed, felt a subtle shame inside? That soft discomfort that whispers, "That didn't come from truth. It came from fear, from habit, from wanting something." That moment is not your enemy. That moment is your invitation. It's your soul asking you to return to honesty, to presence, to spiritual clarity. And maybe this is the lesson. Before you speak, return to stillness. Before you offer praise, check your posture, not your physical one, but the posture of your heart. Are you rooted in presence or in performance? Are you trying to lift someone or to be liked? There's a quiet revolution that begins when we stop performing kindness and start embodying it. It changes our relationships, it changes how we're perceived. But more importantly, it changes who we are when no one's watching. Spiritual maturity is not in how eloquently you speak, but in how silently you witness. It's in the way your words carry peace instead of pressure, grace instead of agenda. There's a verse that comes to mind. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. In other words, be real, be consistent, be whole. That's how spiritual trust is built. That's how emotional safety is restored. And I tell you this not as a man who always got it right, but as one who learned, sometimes too late, that sincerity is the strongest compliment you can ever give. Sincerity, rooted in clarity, not decoration, but devotion, not performance, but presence. You may never speak to millions. You may never write a book or stand behind a podium. But every day, with every word, you have a pulpit. You are preaching with your presence. So what sermon are your compliments preaching? From this day forward, may your words be fewer, but deeper. May your compliments not seek applause, but awakening. May you speak not to impress, but to connect, soul to soul, moment to moment. You don't need to change your tone or memorize the right phrases. You only need to return to the truth. And the truth is this: people don't remember what you said. They remember how seen they felt when you said it. You don't have to be poetic. You don't have to be profound. You just have to be present. Present enough to see someone's courage when they're pretending to be okay. Present enough to say, "You've been carrying this quietly, haven't you?" Present enough to say nothing at all, and let your silence be sanctuary. There's a sacred kind of strength in people who no longer use praise as currency. They bless with presence. They lift with noticing. They heal by not needing to fix. And maybe, just maybe, you're one of them now. Because the moment you stop complimenting to gain and start witnessing to give, you become part of something eternal, a lineage of quiet healers, of those who walk into rooms not to shine, but to warm, not to dominate, but to dignify. I believe with all my heart that you were made for this, for truth, for presence, for the kind of kindness that costs something, not money, but awareness, not effort, but embodiment. And if you've made it this far, then something in you is already shifting. You're not here to flatter. You're here to remember what words are for. Words are seeds, and every day you're planting. So plant with care, with reverence, with intention. Let your words water the parts of people they forgot were alive. Let your compliments be honest enough to build trust. Let your language become your legacy. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to begin again, this time from a place of stillness. There's a strength in you now that doesn't shout. It breathes, it anchors, it endures. And that's the kind of strength this world needs. May your presence speak louder than your praise. May your honesty become your influence. And may you never again trade authenticity for approval. Because when you speak from truth, you don't need to convince anyone.